and they are basically, I don't know what that was. She's dead. That's like the premise of the book. So this is kind of, I can be sometimes difficult to impress. That's not right. So one of the many things that I'm trying to be better at is like, where do we begin? Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to a very overdue July reading wrap-up. So not only has it been a minute since I've done an actual sit-down video, it's been about 2 or 10 or a month and a half since I've read some of these books. So it is fully mid-August. We're just getting to it. Life, you know, the things. But I read a whole bunch of amazing books in July. I read 10 books. So here we are talking about them now because we don't have any time to waste. So I am going to beg your indulgence as I probably muddle through some of these books because again, it's been a minute. So the first book I read in July was The Daydreams by Laura Hankin. And this book was gifted to me by Berkeley and I loved it. So I read this, I started this July 1, finished it on the 5th. And I have a note in here that says, it cried at the end. 2000s nostalgia. So this is about a group of teenagers that were on a short-lived hit TV show in 2004 called The Daydreams, and it was innocent seeming teenagers acting and singing their hearts out. So it was almost like a little bit Saved by the Bell, a little bit, I feel like kind of Mickey Mouse Club type of a thing. And something happened back then that imploded the show and all of the friendships. And now they're getting called back together again to do a reunion, kind of seeing each other for the first time and revisiting the past and facing up to everything that happened back then. So we do get the dual timelines. I, as I said in the opening note, was absolutely here for all of the 2000s nostalgia of this book, from the fashion to the music, just like all of it. And I had such a great time with this book. So this is the first Laura Hankin book that I have read, and I'm just going to spoiler alert you guys and let you know, but I feel like if you saw that last massive book haul that I did, I bought both of her previous books because I need more of her in my life. So I bought 2 of her 3 previous books. I bought Happy and You Know It, and I bought A Special Place for Women. I haven't read them yet, but we're not here to talk about that. So, as I said, we're getting past and present timelines, and then we're also getting a bit of fan fiction thrown in between, and we're getting some diary entries. And I loved the setup of this book. I loved the delivery of it, so I liked the mixed media aspect of it. And it was so fun to see how things are misrepresented, things are misunderstood, a lot of like behind the curtain of what happens on a TV show, seeing where these people are now, how some of their careers still managed to completely explode while others completely imploded. And it does feel like there are some winks and nods to some famous of the time 2000 teen stars, I feel like Brittany and Jessica and such like that. And I just really enjoyed it overall. So it's got that whole like celebrity gossip angle to it. You have these 3 girls who were competing against each other, but friends, and just sort of this warped reality that they all lived in. And it's funny now that I am knee deep into the 9021 OMG podcast and hearing a lot of the behind the scenes of that, and a lot of sort of how the storylines on the TV show bled into real life in terms of the competition between the different actors and actresses, and just how things that were happening on the screen while maybe not happening in reality, how things sort of bled together. So I'm really just living for all of the gossip of it all. I really enjoyed her writing style, and I had great fun with it. So I think it was really well done. I'm so happy I picked it up. And I'm so happy that I've finally read a Laura Hankin, and I've got more to go back to. So I highly recommend it, especially if you love that timeline of the 2000s. And I think those TV shows, like I said, of the time, but great fun, loved it. And I will for sure obviously be reading more by her because I picked up some more. Now, before I dive into the next book, I feel like I should just asterisk this and let you guys know it's not really an asterisk. So one of the many things that I'm trying to be better at is like, where do we begin? But it is reading arcs that I have asked for, reading arcs that maybe have been sent to me, or final copies of books. that have been sent to me and reading them before their pub days, getting my reviews up and supporting these authors. And it is not lost on me the luxury of being able to have books sent to me and being able to ask for books and sometimes have them actually show up. I don't get everything I ask for. Obviously, you guys know midnight is the darkest hour. I'm not over it yet, but I really focused a lot. So a lot of these books from July are going to be new releases that came out in July and the beginning of August. So anyway, just if you're just like, oh gosh, here's another one. They're so good though. They're so good. So next up I have A Liable Woman by May Cobb. This was also very kindly gifted to me by Berkeley. And if you guys have been around my blog a little bit, you've already heard me talk about this, I feel like in a vlog that I did. And I've since like posted it on Instagram and other places. And my biggest takeaway from this book is Xanadu. So like, I actually had the most delightful Instagram exchange with May Cobb about Xanadu because the main character in this book was named after Olivia Newton-John because her mom was obsessed with Xanadu, and I just love that. I'm a woman of a certain age, my friends. So I have read both of May Cobb's previous books that you can still get your hands on. So I was going to say A Liable Woman. I read The Hunting Wives and My Summer Darlings, and she writes South Texas, steamy, complicated women, a little bit soapy, but not crazy soapy. Like I talked about, The Hunting Wives reminded me of sort of Desperate Housewives in Texas. And I would say My Summer Darlings was very Witches of Eastwick in South Texas. And then I would say this is probably the least soapy of the three, but still like very delicious in all the best ways. Also set in Texas. So in A Liable Woman, we are following Kira, and she has not been back to her affluent hometown for over 20 years. And she left after her mom died. And she was always very suspicious of the circumstances around her mom's death. And people weren't really happy that she was questioning it. So she was a teenager when it happened. She wound up living with her grandmother, who promptly sent her away to a boarding school. And after she went to boarding school, she moved out to California. So she just received an invitation in the mail for an old friend of hers from high school who was renewing her wedding vows. And she kind of doesn't really want to go back. So sort of in a very similar but totally different vein to A Christmas Murder Game by Alexandra Benedict, our main character in this book is lured back when her grandmother tells her that she can give her the secrets behind her mother's death. And the same thing was the carrot that was hung out in front of our main character in A Christmas Murder Game. So Kira returns, and she returns to old friends, ex-friends, her sister, her former high school crush, and all the memories rushing back to her. So you get to see these very complicated relationships that take place over the course of this long weekend for the wedding renewal ceremony. And you get to see the intricacies of this town, how tight-knit these people are, how long their history is. And then we get alternating chapters in the past from Sadie, who was her mom. And we're trying to really unravel what happened. And I loved, because this was such a tight-knit community and such a small community, and in some ways, but in totally different ways, reminded me of my own hometown growing up, where like I graduated high school with probably 97% of the people I went to kindergarten with. So like one person left, one person came in, maybe one person stayed back, and one person skipped a grade, like whatever. But it was basically like the same 80-ish kids from the start, and everybody knew each other's parents. It was all that same little tight community. So what I enjoyed about this is in the past tense, you were seeing all the parents of all the people we're seeing in the present day. And I just had a very delicious time with it. She can paint an atmosphere, cocktails, music, the interesting connections and relationships between these people. And I had a really fun time with this book. I feel like very hesitant to say too much about it, but I really enjoyed so much of Sadie's story, and I hesitate to use the word message because that sounds really preachy, but I think a lot of what Sadie was feeling and a lot of her emotions as a woman and how she was viewed as a woman and what it means to be a likable woman. I really connected with a lot of May Cobb's writing in this, and I just find her such a delightful writer. I really enjoy her physical writing style. I find her books super compulsive to read. And I loved it. And like I said, I cried at the end. So you can interpret that 10 Ways Till Sunday if you want to. But I had great fun with it. And I'm very excited to see what she comes up with next. But she definitely became like an auto-buy author for me after I read The Hunting Wives. And I adore her so much. The next book I have is The Girl I Was by Geneva Rose. So I listened to the audiobook of this, and I'm going to get my audiobook narrator correct. It is Hillary Huber, and I loved this book. So I have now officially read all of Geneva Rose's current, like all of her releases so far. I've read her books. And I would say this is tied for my favorite with One of Us is Lying. That's not the name of it. One of Us is Dead. I always get it mixed up. And one of the things I love the most about her books, before I dive into this one in particular, is every single one of her books is so different. And I love, not that she jumps genre, although I guess she does like a little bit. I love that everything is totally different what you're getting from her. So this is one of my most favorite kinds of books. This is a second chance at fixing your life kind of a book. And it is my fantasy to be able to go back and maybe change a couple of things. And I just love this as a concept. It's one of my favorite concepts for a book. So in this one, we have Alexis Spencer. So she thinks she's got it all figured out. So I want to say she's in her early 30s or maybe just 30. And she's coming home. She has lost her job. She's lost her boyfriend. Her friends are like a distant memory. She just is finding herself alone and sad and reminiscing. And she does what anybody would do in that situation. She drinks herself into an oblivion, blacks out, and she wakes up in the bed of a stranger. She figures out that she's in a fraternity house, that she's like, why am I here? I'm a grown woman. Why am I at a fraternity house? And she figures out that she is in 2002 at her old college. So she is her current self in her past timeline, and she meets her 18-year-old self. And the two of them have to fix things and figure out what's up, because she 1000% is blaming her 18-year-old self for what happens to her later in life. And there is so much brilliant humor between present day Alexis and past Alexis. Again, much like the Daydreams, clearly I was like in a mood. We get all that early 2000s nostalgia, which I love, from, again, the fashion to the music to all of it. I had such a great time with it. And there's also so much warmth and depth to this, because this is not a spoiler in any kind of a way, but she is living with her 18-year-old self at college, and it crosses over Thanksgiving. So she has to go to her parents' house from 2002. So you get all of this interesting family dynamic, and I just absolutely loved it. This was definitely funny. This was definitely very heartfelt in a lot of ways. There's a lot of, you know, second chance at life, so to speak, kind of a thing, trying to figure out what's wrong, trying to pinpoint moments in your life, trying to make changes. And I really feel like she nailed so much of this. And I don't know what, there's just something about, whether it's the way she writes, whether it's a turn of phrase, whether it's her humor, like I feel like everything in her writing style very much connects with me, and I very much love it. So I would say, because I know not everybody loves everything necessarily that an author writes. So I read, One of Us is Dead was the first book of hers that I read. And in that one, we are getting kind of a Desperate Housewife-ish type of thing also. So you have a group of very wealthy women from Buckhead in Atlanta, and they all go to this hair salon, waxing, spa situation in town. And the woman who owns that knows everybody's deep, dark secrets. And of course, when that book opens, there is the head of the salon sitting with the police, trying to figure out like what happened, because something bad went down. And then we go back in time and meet all the women and hear all their secrets and all of that stuff. It's absolutely my kind of a book. The next book of hers that I read was Never Saw Me Coming, Should Have Seen This Coming, was You Shouldn't Have Come Here. So that was her book that came out this year, which is like crazy off the rails, Woman goes to a B&B kind of in the middle of nowhere, has a kind of sexy romance with the owner, but also some really weird stuff starts going down. So that is definitely like an off the rails crazy town kind of a book. So if you are into off the rails and crazy town, that might be your cup of tea. And then I read The Perfect Marriage, which I feel like is the book of hers that everybody like really put her on the map with that. I think she like just sold 1 million copies of it. But that one is I mentioned this in the vlog that I did, I hope I did. This is definitely a mistress comes in and wrecks everybody's life type of a situation. So in that one, the husband's mistress is found murdered. He is the #1 suspect. His wife is an attorney and she defends him in that case. So very different books, but I think there's something for everybody in Geneva Rose. And then her book that's coming out next year, just as a teaser, because I saw this on her channel, which you guys, or her Instagram, and you guys probably saw it too. In that one, it is 2 sisters are packing up their parents' things. Their parents have passed away, and they're going through everything in their house, and they find these VHS tapes, and they're watching home movies and stuff like that, kind of nostalgia train. And in one of the home movies, all of a sudden, like, I want to say like her dad is on the screen, and then like her mom is on the screen, and then there's like a bloody outfit or like something kind of insinuating that like maybe they murdered somebody, or maybe they buried a body, or like they're up to some real no good. And then like the VHS tape goes blank or goes black. So I don't know, it just sounds really good, but I'm a huge fan of hers. She just got like this massive book deal too. So props to her. These stories just get me so excited, but all of that to say, The Girl I Was absolutely amazing. Just a huge fan of that book, in case you couldn't tell. Loved it. The next book is also an audiobook that I listened to, and this is The Night It Ended by Katie Garner. And this was read by Exie Sands. And this was kind of pitched as like a dark academia. So we have a secluded campus in upstate New York. It is just before Christmas. Things are icy, things are snowy, and the body of one of the students is found like at the bottom of the hill. She's dead. That's like the premise of the book. But she's like in her PJs. It's kind of strange. Why is she out there? What actually happened? Was it an accident? Was it something more suspicious? You know, it would be brilliant if I actually got my notes on this book, because I took notes. Okay, give me a second. Give me a second. Not that it means anything to you. Okay. I take notes on audiobooks so that this is not as fumbly as I just made it be. So in this book, we are following Dr. Madeline Pine. So she is a criminal psychiatrist. She is known as an expert in female violence. And the parents of Charlie have hired a detective whose name is Matt Reyes. And he winds up reaching out to Madeline because of her expertise. And he is hoping that she can come help him figure out maybe what happened to Charlie. So Madeline goes. She's here to help. She's happy to help. And she gets to the campus, and again, it's pretty secluded. There's hardly any students there. The headmistress is not necessarily totally helpful, and Madeline is trying to piece together what actually happened. So I would say I was very excited for this book, and unfortunately it didn't totally work for me. I wanted, and this does not make the book not good, I wanted more of like the dark academia student side of things. So there's definitely an unreliable narrator element to this that I couldn't totally get into. And I feel like a lot of, like, she's interviewing the students, she's trying to figure out what happened to Charlie. So I do feel like there was a lot of just things being told to us rather than us seeing things play out, because we're not getting flashbacks because the students are in our main point of view. So we're just getting Madeline's point of view. And since she obviously wasn't there, we can't go back and see what happened. But there were some elements where I feel like some things that were happening in the book with Madeline just didn't work for me. And I feel like this happened again with a book that I read in August, which you're just going to have to wait until that happens. But I do think there's a little bit of a hindrance as someone who reads a lot of thrillers, a lot of dark academia, where I have certain expectations for things. I have a very high bar. I know I can be overly critical and have super high expectations for books. And I think I shouldn't say a lot of the time, some of the time books have things in them that feel familiar to me or that just don't totally knock my socks off, because I feel like I've been very spoiled by all of the books that I've read. I mean, it's my go-to genre, so I can be sometimes difficult to impress. I will say that. So maybe if you're new to the genre, this might be good for you. I also found it to be a little bit slower, and this again falls into that very difficult bucket of people calling a book a thriller. So maybe a bit of psychological suspense. We are getting Madeline. We are getting the girls at school. I almost wish, but again, I can't put what I want on a book to be the book because that's not fair. I'm not dinging it for this, but I wish we had more student point of view, I guess I would say. So anyway, isolated thriller, suspicious people, and a what really happened here. And then we get a little bit of the detective angle. It's not really a procedural in that sense. It's very much more focused on Madeline and her journey. So we're not getting too much of the detective perspective. He's there, obviously, and he's part of the story, but it's not like a hardcore police procedural, if that helps in any kind of a way. So that is this book. I'm like looking at my notes in here and I'm just like, there's so much stuff that I wrote down that are obviously spoilers and I don't want to risk saying any of them. So that was the night it ended. Okay, and then let's talk about A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. So I was also very lucky to get an e-arc of this. I was really hoping my hard copy, like final copy of the book would be here by now. I ordered the UK edition and it is literally like in transit. I don't know if anybody calling my New York tri-state-ish area people, everything flows through Pennsylvania, and many a times you will see that your package has left Pennsylvania. And there will just be a gap of days. Like this package left Pennsylvania 4 days ago. Unclear where it is. And then sometimes it just poof, it just shows up. Sometimes there is an eventual tracking to it. You know, sometimes it's just on the doorstep, like here you are, here's your package. So my package has left Pennsylvania and has not yet arrived in New York. So here we go. But A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. So the only book of hers that I haven't read is her Dark Academia book because the Dark Academia disaster of 2022. But I love her. So she writes, I feel like, without fear, all in, loves to explore the dark side of things. And what I love about her is she will like almost let you decide. Like she is not, let me talk about what the book is about. So this is a book about Wes and Ivy, because I'm about to say something that's not going to make any sense if you don't know what the book is about. So Wes and Ivy are one of these never or forever couples. They have been on and off for like 10 years. They met in college and they are basically, I don't know what that was. They are basically a storm when they are together, and they are the tornado that like pulls everybody and everything in with them. Some people willingly jump in the boat, some people run for cover. They are a disaster waiting to happen, but they are so into each other. I don't know if you've ever known people like this where like there's so much like chaos and friction, and from the outside looking in, why would you even be together? There's just so much here. But some people are so like inexplicably drawn to each other that they can't not be together. And you could argue that Wes and Ivy are terrible for each other. You could argue that Wes and Ivy are perfect for each other. But there is no doubt that they know each other. They love each other. They press each other's buttons. And there's a storm a-coming. And they have gotten into some stuff in their days. And there's just some stuff that's gonna come for them now. Very hard book to talk about. So what I was going to say about Samantha Downing is she's not coming at this saying they're bad, they're good, they're this, they're that. Like some people are gonna understand Wes and Ivy, some people aren't gonna understand them at all. And I very much enjoyed this completely messed up ride that we went on with the two of them. So we get multiple POVs, we get some multiple timelines, we start to understand where their relationship started, and we get to see how other people are pulled in to the chaos that the two of them are. So this to me was one of those books that it made me uncomfortable sometimes. Again, elements of it felt familiar to me from people I used to know, and I was very intrigued by them. So the only thing I will say is there is a character in this book who I really loved and wish we got more of. And I don't want to tell you, I'm obviously not going to tell you anything about this character, but there was someone that I was so intrigued by, and I had so many thoughts and feelings and questions, and I was wrong about a whole bunch of stuff. But I really wanted more from them. But as a whole, I very much enjoyed this book and had a very fun time with it. And it's just, I feel like everybody can understand, well, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people can understand what it's like to maybe even know that the relationship you're in is not the healthiest for you, but you do it anyway because you can't not. And again, like I said, I mean, there's no doubt that they love each other, and everybody's love is different, so to each their own. But it is a very twisted love story for sure, and I just absolutely loved it. So My Lovely Wife was compulsive bingeable read for me. He started it, which was like the sibling road trip book, was such a crazy wild ride. And then I have For Your Own Good, which is the Dark Academia book, which I'm also super excited about. So also a super fan of Samantha Downing, and I'm very excited for whatever she does next. But until then, at least there's a bunch of backlist books if you guys haven't already read her. But highly recommend A Twisted Love Story. And on that note, I am going to call it a day on part 1 of what I read in July. So I have 5 more books to talk about, but in the interest of time, because I have saddled you guys with a bunch of super long videos lately, and if you watch them, thank you. But I'm going to give us all a little bit of a break today. So I will be back with part 2, which I am filming, spoiler alert, today. So you're going to see it any minute now. And yeah, I will see you guys in that video. The drawback of filming at the end of a workday is my brain is so fuzzy and fried. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. Let me know what your favorite book of July was, if you've read any of these, thoughts, feelings, you know, all the stuff. And I will see you guys in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. So until then, bye everybody.